thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to have a look at a couple of games from Leeds Rhinos last year. You know, when we were asked to do this exercise, it's a difficult one to do as a coach because obviously the rest of this season we've got to play. You know, got to play most of the teams in the competition. We're very mindful as coaches, I guess, that we're happy to share stuff, but you don't want to give too much away to your opposition coaches and teams. So we've decided to go down a route and look at a couple of games last year where we played London Broncos. The context of those games in the time of the season for us is one were a magic weekend. We're off the back of two, very difficult defeats and trying to rebuild the confidence of the team a little bit. London were around the bottom of the league as well. So, we're very much judged and being billed as a relegation battle. And the second time we went there, which would have been about 8 weeks later, it was a game when we went to play in London that if we won, would pretty much ensure our Super League survival. So both were big games at the time. And obviously London not being in Super League this year, it's a little bit easier knowing that their team's broken up, that we can have a look at some of the stuff we did against London in those two games. What we are going to look at is a couple of London's preferred attacking shapes, the success that they'd had in the build-up to our games with these shapes, and that we sort of predicted we could expect to see similar type of play again in these particular games. And from one game to the next, how they changed their shapes a little bit, and how we sort of tinkered with our defence a little bit to combat what London were doing and the success that they've had with these particular plays. Okay, so what we're also going to do is show you how we trained around it a little bit. And we're also going to pay attention and focus on the role of our fullback, which in these two games were Jack Walker, and look at the important role the modern day fullback has, not only in offense, but in particular, in this particular instance, in defense as well. Okay, the amount of work he has to do, the amount of reading of play, and I said the important role that he has in our defensive line and how it changed from one game to the other. Okay, so I've got some preview clips first of all, and it's probably important to point out that we're probably going to have a look at London attacking a couple of different teams. We're definitely not going to critique the teams that they're playing again. Everybody's got their own way and style of defending. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong. But we're going to more focus on how we try to combat London rather than a critique of the opposition that we were playing on these instances. Okay, so I'll share my screen so we can go on to what the players would have seen and some of the clips we would have shown in the week's build-up to this particular game. So we'll start off, as you can see. We've got two screens here. One's obviously a tight up closer shot, and one gives you a wider angle. I'll just flick this right to the start. So we're going to look at it from the wide angle to start with. Okay. Right, first thing we're going to talk about is the field position that London want to play off here. So it's difficult sometimes because of camera angles. Sometimes it can be a little bit of an illusion, really, when you're watching it off, from different grounds and from different angles. But London are laying up here, laying the start play up around an inside post. So I think, what a lot of teams now will defend the space. So if you think you've got two markers and a fullback, that gives you 10 defensive players. If that ball's smack bang in the middle of the field, you'll split your defensive line, 5 defenders one side, 5 defenders another side. There's always an anomaly to that rule. If London are stacking their attack one way, you may well not defend it 5 and 5. You may well throw an extra man over and defend it 6-4. In this instance, they're laying up in and around an inside post, which is right on the cusp of an area here. So on the cusp, we mean, is it 5-5? Is it 6-4? They're going to try and have a look at how you set up before they make their decision. So, we've gone, Wakefield did have gone 6-4, which is a look that we would go 6-4 from an inside post. but we'll pay attention to London here and we'll have a look at their setup. Okay, so on this side, the far side, if you like, it's a really big space for 4 defenders. We've got a fullback here in Walker, who's positioned himself behind the ruck. Now Walker's leaving himself in a position that he can attack both sides. Okay, he'll have a look how we line up, and then he'll choose his side to go and attack around Abdull on the far side to give them a sort of 5-on-4 numerical advantage in space. Or if he feels, the money is on the big side, he'll loop around Morgan Smith, get out the back of the second rower here, and try and make that 7-on-6 in this space here. Okay. What we do, we watch the film over a number of games, and just from watching Abdull and Walker over this amount of games, 75-80% of his runs are coming on this side with Abdull. And another point to mention out is what we feel is if he does go on the big side here, just look at his starting point here, okay? He's starting sort of flat behind the ruck, probably in front of Morgan Smith here. And if he wants to get on this line, his line is going to be a little bit flatter, and he's got to work really, really hard to get there because he's going on the long side. We just feel that, internally we feel that is probably not as productive a line for him. So if he were going on the big side and he actually started out here, he can pick his depth, he can pick his timing, his tempo. He gets a better eyes up visual on what's happening in front of him in the defensive line, and it's just a better line for him. You can make this line work, but it does at times limit your options on what you can do with it. Even though these London players, the play will move forward, he's still got a lot of work to do, and it's still a relatively flat line, given his starting point here. That changes if it's from 50%. It's a little bit easier to get on either end from a 50%. And, if you watch Super League, you will see some teams and some players in particular that can really make that line work for them. But, in our view, to defend 7-on-6 in that space with the added sort of factor that we don't feel that's as quality a line, we're really comfortable with 6 defenders defending that. However, coming on this 5 side, in this amount of space, with not much time for the defensive line to react, this is a threat. All right. So first thing I'm going to draw attention to is the shape. Okay, Abdull's really flat, and he's going to play over the advantage line. The reason for that is he wants to get past these markers. All right, he wants to get past these markers really quickly to stop those guys helping his defenders on this side, and he wants to square up this first defender if he can, and just preserve the space on the outside to try and create his 3-man, having to tackle Pitts, which gives him a 3-on-2 on the outside. Okay, so we're going to let these play, and I'll try and play through these preview clips relatively quickly. Okay, and that Abdull plays square, Pitts gets inside shoulder, and he hits the lead runner. Although you look, that gives him a 3-on-2, in close to 20 meters of space. So he's really creating a lot of doubt. Abdull's got to pick the pass, but he's really creating a lot of doubt in these outside 2 defenders. And, you get quality fullbacks in this position with time and space. Quite often they can pick the pass. We'll have a look at the next setup. Very similar. They find the same field position. I'm going to pause it here, but first thing you'll notice here are a couple of things. If you take it back a fraction, is Abdull's talking to Walker, all right, which we think gives a real giveaway to our players that, get ready and get prepared. It's coming this way. But another indicator here about what play might come is the shape. So they've changed the shape. Last one we had Elliot Keir tucked in behind Pitts, which would suggest he's getting ready to play off the fullback. This time, the outside 2 men are flattened up. Different options that they can use on this play, but it would suggest to us that if we can look up and recognise that a different play is coming, and generally the different play comes because the fullback will have to pick a different line, and instead of the play being on, I guess, 3 in this time, they get the play on 2 in, Reece Lynn, create the space on the outside and nearly put a try away. So there's a little bit of a clue in that for how London are setting up and the shape that they're going to throw at us just by the start positions of the centre, the winger, and the back row. Okay, pay attention to this one, and really important when you play London and play London away on the plastic pitch. You know, the plastic pitch can sometimes affect your contact. You know, your footwork into contact sometimes is a little bit trickier for defenders. And also, we're going to play a London team here who probably have a different shape to the middles to a lot of teams in the comp. So a different shape, I'm talking about guys like Batty, Krasniqi, Yates, and in this instance, Richards. They probably lack the height that some middle players have in the competition. But at the same time, they're all, you know, barrel-chested, solidly built, and get the ability, if I put this on the close-up shot, you know, a little bit of a tactic of theirs is to try and chest you up. So he's trying to get Geordie Crowther right in the chest there to create some space, which will allow him to get to floor really easy. Now, most teams, I'm sure, as everybody is aware, you see Dave Fafita coming in here. You know, Dave Fafita's jobs were to come in, have a little scan of this, you know, clip his legs together to help the guys up the top and control Richards going from air to ground to try and put him on his back. But what we found when we played London, especially when they were on what we would call the setup plays, is these, you know, don't want to use the word shorter, or they might be looking to clip my ear next time I see them, but more stockier squat middles, trying to get that bump so they can get to ground really easy. So you see Dave Fafita there, he knows it's really difficult for him to get into his legs there and help flip him over. So that can create a lot of two-man tackles if you're not careful. So going into our game, you know, this was a factor for us and something we will practice, that if we found ourselves in those positions, we would want to add weight on top. We would want to try and flatten the defender out, take one of his posts away, but add as much weight on top as we flatten him out on the floor to try and buy us that little bit of extra time in the ruck. To do that, a couple of things on here. You don't want to be relying on the referee calling surrender all the time. You know, we would probably view a lot of these tackles as succumbing to the tackle and surrendering on you. But you've got to be really quick. You know, if you're not quick, the referee will pin you for, you know, I guess for flopping, and you're at risk of giving a penalty away. So, you know, if they're looking to find the floor and you don't get a good enough grip on them in your initial contact, getting on the top really quickly can also buy you a little bit of time in the ruck. We'll go back to the big shot. And again, we got that 5-on-4 situation. Now, what we'll notice here is obviously Wakefield are a little bit closer to the try line. And if we look at the referee, it's fifth tackle. So what Chris Chester will have done on this, and what most coaches will have on their tip sheet when we play London Broncos, is Walker is a tremendous chaser of kicks. Okay, so he would position himself right around Jordan Abdull. Abdull, as we know, got a terrific left foot. Whether he's kicking from 40 out and putting his big floating spiral bombs up for Walker to chase and out jump the fullback, or as he's getting close into the line that he can thread it through the line for Walker. So that's a big space for 4. At this point, Rocky Hampshire's put himself in the line, but I'll just roll this forward in slow motion. So just the mere fact that Walker's, jockeying Abdull up on the inside, Abdull, there's a little bit of show and a little bit of deception as if he's going to pass the ball to Walker. So that attracts this marker a little bit, but also it creates doubt in Hampshire. Hampshire knows if he comes and plugs this hole on Walker, there's every chance that Abdull can thread that ball through the line, either side. And if he can land it in the right area, it'll give him a chase for obviously a try or a repeat set. Aware of this, Hampshire drops out of the line, which again just creates a little bit of doubt and numbers and space in and around the ball player. But I'm also going to bring you to Ben Jones-Bishop here, who again, he'll be acutely aware it's last play. Abdull's got the ball in his hands and he sets off. Okay, so all of a sudden that potential 5 defenders becomes 3. Fortune favours the brave on this, and Abdull finds pitch just leading into space on an outside shoulder. A back rower who's got some pass, got some offload, flicks it out with a tackle, and running it on the last again, comes up with a try from him. But a lot of that came in the doubt that having Walker chasing up in and around the kicker, the effect it had on the fullback's ability to come and play in the line on that one. Okay, this is a Saints game a bit later on when Saints took a younger team down here this day, so they were lacking some experienced players on their edges a little bit. Okay, what we see this time is Walker's not on the play. Okay, so we term this as having a flat 4. So the play hasn't got any levels on it or any tiers. So it's just going to be 4-on-4 in big space. As we have a look and we get the ball in Abdull's hands, the first thing we're going to look at is the space in and around here, which for most pivots is is something that they would generally rub their hands at. It gives them opportunity to step off the left foot and try and beat him on the inside, step off his right foot, but also, it's giving him some big spaces to try and aim his attackers in. So they have a little fold play. We get Elliott into space, which if he picks the pass, is going to create him a lot of trouble. And again, if Pitts can just catch that early and squeeze that ball across him to Reece Williams, he got the overlap. So even on the flat 4 without the fullback, we're seeing the opportunities that they're creating for themselves. Okay. We're going to roll it around the other side. Put this on close-up shot. Okay, so Morgan Smith, just have a look at your big shot to start with. So it's the same shape. Look, we've got 2 middles ready to play here out the back to the pivot. We've got Walker loitering behind the ruck, but more often than not, he's joining this 4 side to try and give him a crack at 5-on-4. Okay, so it's exactly the same shape that they're working to later in the set, but this time just playing off the other post. Not going to critique these too much from a Wakefield point of view. We'll let these play. So Morgan gets right into the line, and Junior Sao just comes up with a try-saving tackle where he gets some guys in and assisting, holds him up over the line. Later on in the contest, I'm going to draw your attention to this. The rugby union lines on the pitch help us out a little bit here. So try line, it's a 5-metre line. That's a 10-metre line. So 5 metres out, Wakefield have gone with 2 markers. That can be the system. Sometimes it can depend on the speed of the ruck. Sometimes it can depend on just a little bit of communication. But this time they've ended up with 2 markers on the try line. London have set up in the way that we've been seeing them set up through the rest of the game. The 5-on-4. Wide and flat off the dummy half, which creates that 3-on-2. And Junior Sao's in a really difficult position here and does the right thing by closing Walker's lane down. Walker picks the pass and they put a try away. Okay, last one down here. This is a little bit different because it's a little bit right on try line. Later in the set count, I'd look at Wakefield here and think they're relatively well numbered up. As we see, we've got that levelled attack again. Okay, so we've got Elliott here ready to pick his line off Walker, the fullback. And if we just play this in slow and watch this unfold, Abdull uses the speed of the ball to get on the outside of his defender. That gets him into this space. Even though Pitts is heading in there, he realises this and tries to change his line. But Abdull, just a little bit of show and go. And the 3-in defender falls for the bait and Abdull runs under for a try. So what we've got to position there is London have got to go to shape. Any sort of good ball they're getting, sometimes they can get to that shape twice in a set. They will head there with one of the forwards who might try and bump you and drop his legs. So the importance of winning that setup play to give our line time to prepare itself, get our numbers right, organise our fullback and organise our markers is really important. That's only one little part of the set, But generally, when you played them, they would try and head to the post for at least two shots in that set of a very similar setup. Recognition of the shape is important. So our outside guys having a look at where the fullback is, seeing if the centre's picking his line off the fullback or whether he's getting up a little bit flatter, which will change the defender that the play is on, okay, and change the roles and responsibilities of our outside men, really. But as we've seen, they made a lot of strong opportunities in that game, or those two games, from that one shape and that one setup. So we wanted to come up with our system for this game that would counteract that and try to put us in a stronger position for when it came. Okay, so you see a lot of teams defending in a similar way to what we did in this game. So I'm gonna flick you back onto sharing my screen again and having a look at our clips from when we played London at the Magic weekends. So this is a tap start. Trent Merrin just bites in on that straight runner a little bit, but manages to recover himself. Now it's not one of the middles I talked about hitting this ball up, but nonetheless, Nate Petru, Brad Dwyer, Trent Merrin do a really good job in putting him in a strong position in the ruck to give us time to get back set. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is just explain our roles and responsibilities and how we sort of tinkered with our D a little bit and give our markers and give our fullback some rules on what we wanted to see in this game. Okay, so from this position, what you'll tend to find is a lot of the time markers will go back to the zone. So by that, an explanation is let's say, for instance, Rob Louis is at first marker and Brad Dwyer is at second marker. Generally, Rob would come back to this side to get back to his zone, quicker and easier. What we wanted to do in these situations where we feel we've got a big four side or a flat four, if you like, we would want our second marker, regardless of position. Okay, so whether it's a middle, an edge, a centre, we want our second marker to come and join this edge. Okay, we would talk to him about how he comes out of the ruck, how he comes out of the marker position. So by that we mean, if you can imagine a clock, we would want him at this side to come out at 5 o'clock. We just feel that puts him on a really good angle to come around, get a good look at the pivot, and join this lineup. Okay, the next thing we're gonna have a look at is Jack Walker. Okay, so we feel that 5-on-4 in such big space is really difficult to defend. As we've seen just from a real snapshot of small clips there, London having a lot of success 5-on-4, even at times when they perhaps didn't pick the right pass. They were getting to a point within those plays where they were creating a lot of opportunity. Okay, so we wanted to try and stop Abdull getting to our back rower, our foreign defender. So we threw 5 in there. Okay, so traditionally, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, traditionally your fullback is out of your line and your last line of defence. Probably in the modern day game, you see a lot of fullbacks coming up and joining the line now because attacks have been so good at putting the defence where they want to put them, manipulating you to a point where you get to a big space and they can throw the numbers late on you and come up with really well executed plays. Okay, so we're going to stick Jack in our line to make that a line where he's a genuine A defender and that becomes a 5. And we're also going to make sure that we get really quick help from this marker coming out to try and make Abdull make his pass a little bit earlier. Okay, I'm going to play this in fast, then I'll put it back and go frame by frame. Okay, so what we see here is London. First of all, the recognition of their shape. Walker's on his way. It's the exact same shape that we looked at. Elliott's flattened up off Jay Pitts. So again, that would suggest that the play is going to be one pass further on or one defender further on. Might be an argument here that Brad Dwyer's jumped the gun, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt on this and say he's just really quick, really good on these type of plays, Brad. Jackson at A defender, and as we just roll this out a little bit, see Brad come and put pressure on Abdull, so we'll feel that straight away. Now, what we ask these defenders to do, from Cameron Smith out to Callum, out to Liam, we talk about them having a fluid line. So by having a fluid line, if you just draw attention, as you can see it in the shot here, to, yeah, that's probably the best vision we've got, to Cameron's footwork. So when the pass goes, on the pass, you just get the footwork from these guys that they've come up in the line a little bit, but only a bit. We ask them to hold and be a little bit passive, but the line sort of drifts out, okay? So that's what we mean by being fluid. When the passes go, the line drifts out just to position the attackers in a little bit of a different spot, put them on a different shoulder, but also equalise our numbers. So we can see at this point, because we've got help from Brad, and because that line has been fluid, Cameron, and if you just check Callum, with that also subtle, not a lot, but subtle sideways movement, we've ended up getting Cameron on pits, Callum's on this straight runner, and it gives Liam a really good look to equalise our numbers, to come and get the man out the back, which is Walker. Okay, Liam's rules in this position are to go on the pass. So by that we mean he's not allowed to come and shut this play down until the ball's left Pitts' hands. That way, if Pitts hits Elliot Kay, it leaves Callum and it leaves Liam in a really good position to make a strong simultaneous tackle to stop the play. Okay, but if he does go out the back, we'd like to think, and most people do, train to a level where, even this looks right at the line, he'll be trained enough to sort of make a good enough read and a good enough decision that he can come and shut this play down. So not only does he shut it down, but he gets forward on the play as well, which cuts down Walker's any time and space and opportunity Walker would have to catch the ball and maybe put some feet on, swerve to his outside, get a fend, keep the ball available for a pass. Liam actually manages to get forward past the play. Tommy Briscoe, our winger, goes with him, so that becomes man on man, which gives him the green light to go and get him. Now, quite often in these situations, the ball player, when he sees him coming, if he can't beat him on the outside, he'll try and step to his inside, which sometimes can leave you not being able to get strong contact on your tackle. So the guys on the inside are really aware of this. So if we watch, Liam does manage to get a good grip of him, but obviously needs finishing off from the inside. So well defended from our boys on that. Right, similar setup, but this time we get to sort of close to a 50%, right in the middle of the field. And I think this has created, again, a little bit of, I wouldn't say confusion, but a little bit of doubt from whether we want Brad Singo back to this side to make 5-on-5, or whether we're going to, go the way that we've practiced in the week and the way that we've tried to prep for this team. And we're going to go 6-4, but we're going to put Jack in here to make the 5. They've gone a little bit wider on this play. Okay, so Singo's not quite back. Really late on, Jack Walker comes into the line. So we'll go through this in slow motion. This is going to end up a long way for Ava to get back. Okay, so if we just let it roll, Abdull, flatten over the ad line. Ava's trying his hardest to get there to close this space up, and that's a great effort from him. And as you can see, Jack Walker, interjects himself into the line really late. We could have done with Jack there a bit earlier to open Cameron's space up. However, he gets there fairly late. This line, as we talk about again, is fluid. So it comes up a little bit, becomes really passive. I'm going to try and avoid the sort of jargon and terminology that we use internally. But if you just check their line, you see Jack Walker here. He's verbally and physically pushing Cameron sideways. So roll it back, and you just watch his line on the pass. They're just gradually drifting out sideways to get to a point where Jack feels like he's got Abdull, which allows Cameron to get off and make the simultaneous tackle with Callum on Pitts. But what we're talking about here again with Liam is if Abdull gets right into the line and plays that ball out the back, this player's unravelled enough, because we've been passive and allowed Abdull to get into the line, this play's unravelled enough that if Abdull goes out of the back, even though, on the frame-by-frame picture, that looks a lot of space, that's still good enough, we think, for Liam Sutcliffe to go and shut that down, and for Tommy Briscoe to come and shut Elliott down as well. We'd leave the winger open, and we would, throw the cards to Abdull and say, if you're going to get through us, you're not going to get through us, you're going to get around us. He's got to find that pass to that winger, or they've got to thread that pass together to the winger before we can close it down. Some teams can, and sometimes you have to sort of tip your hat and say, that's really good play. But, it takes a high level of skill and execution, to beat that play from that angle. So watch it in full. Keep a straight line, close the play down on a forward pass. Okay, other side of the field, same sort of shot. This time, it's a much smaller percentage, so that's gonna really help us because it cuts down the space. You see Trent Merrin going really hard to make Morgan Smith play earlier. That keeps James Donaldson in the line, but at this point, the fact he makes him play that fraction early gets Richie Myler off, and we get to that man-on-man position what Richie can go and tackle again. I'm going to draw it back a little bit. We're going to bring us to Jack Walker again. Such is a space, being a smaller space here. I'm not sure we necessarily need Jack at that. However, really confident that they're going this way. Jack, once he understands Merrin has closed that space up, and you can see his visuals to him pointing here, and the small talk between these two players, Jack then falls out of the line to perform his role as a fullback. Now, we probably didn't speak about this in the previous couple of clips, but what that leaves is it does leave us a bit exposed to a kick. But the importance for Jack here is that he's in the line, but once he knows that's covered, he has the ability to fall out of the line. And the rules for Jack at this point is we want him to stay half a pass on the inside of the ball. Okay, that way, if there's a malfunction in his line and anybody breaks through, he can use his speed and show him the outside and make a last-ditch tackle. But at the same time, he's not going too far and too hard on the play that if they do break, he's making his inside shoulder vulnerable to a step. He just tries a half a pass, will put him just in the right space to try and make a tackle if they do get through our line. And again, if they kick the ball, he's got a head start on any kicks here. But back to the 3-on-3, allows Richie to go get, strong enough in the tackle, and again, inside effort from Donaldson just dislodges the ball. So done really well on that, our guys. Okay, just a little bit of balance to it, and we're going to show you where, in this game, London scored the tries, and how and why. So we're going to get that same setup, but this time we've got no fullback. So the fullback is on his line on the big side, which, as we talked about earlier, can be that little bit more effective and productive for him. But nonetheless, here we've got Abdull loitering around the back of the ruck. So I'll just take this back a couple of frames. So we've got Cameron Smith coming out of the ruck. Jack Walker's holding his spot until he gets back. And then Jack's going to flip to the big side. The fact that Abdull's here means that from 20 metres of space, we've got to honour that with 4. We feel that if Abdull flips around this side really late, the hooker tries to get the markers, it becomes a 4-on-3 situation, or 4 with Jack would mean that Jack as an A defender would have to come up in the line and defend Abdull if he flips Cameron that side. The fact that he would have to come up and defend Abdull, again, leaves us really exposed for any potential kicks through the line or particularly any breaks, okay? So what Jack's going to do is he's going to drop Cameron at A on that side, which again gives Abdull the trigger that he's going to play big side, because coming down this area 4-on-4 with a marker to help, he's going to have a crack, throwing more numbers on the big side with all these pivots playing on the play, okay? So first thing we'll notice is Jack comes to this side to make the 7. We'll roll it through and then go back a little bit slow motion. Ryan Morgan runs a great line off the fullback, comes up with a try. Okay, so first up, markers, although it wasn't really critical in this, we get our markers wrong. We should have second marker coming back. So first marker can go and put pressure on this side. Play a little block play. And as we get to this point, Trent Merrin gets off. You know, the numbers on this play at the moment are 5 on 5. So this should be man on man, which should be a relatively comfortable situation for us to defend. However, I'm going to draw your attention to Richie Myler as a screen defender. And we'll keep his eye on Harry Newman outside of him too. If you just watch Richie here, he just has the slightest little bounce in. Okay, this straight runner is coming into the hole inside of Dono, but Richie just has that little bounce. And what that does, it just opens up this space between Richie and Harry. You know, that's a visual for Walker to sort of carry the ball into. Okay, it gives him a little bit of opportunity to try and beat Richie for speed. Richie recovers well enough, but in this man-on-man situation, if we got to 3 on 2, we would expect us to close it down. But if we got to this man-on-man situation here, you know, we want Richie to release Harry. I won't say Harry's in front of him, but he's almost in line with him. That just takes away a fraction of time for Harry to make a decision. So at this point, Harry, one of Harry's rules is he will protect Richie's outside shoulder. So as Walker's heading into the space, Richie's confident he's got him. Harry's probably not quite as confident he's got him. And what we're saying, this is a really fine line for us, just a fraction off. So Richie doesn't take that bounce in, and Harry's just literally a step behind him. It'll give Harry a fraction more confidence to see if Richie's got him and to move off onto his man on the outside. But good play by Walker to challenge and test that space. And if we look at Ash Hanley's body position, he's pointing out fractionally, and just where he needs to square up and close his lane down on the pass, he does it, but literally gets beat by a step and can't make that tackle. So, you know, just a real couple of small areas on that where we've maybe not quite got it right, but only a fraction. And really good play by London, you know, in particular Walker, the fullback, and a terrific line from Ryan Morgan to execute that try. Okay, one of the later tries I scored in this game, which is a little bit of a disappointment because we previewed for this. However, we'll look at our numbers around the ball. We'll look at Abdull's position. If we remember that try against Wakefield, we'll start by looking in here and thinking Trent Merrin can get to the side of this play the ball a little bit. You know, the knock-on effect or flow-on effect to that is Jack Walker can take another step. If he takes another step and Cameron here can take another step or another meter, you know, the difference and fractions in those meters are all vital and important. You know, the importance of a meter in your defensive line, you know, can be the difference between stopping a try and certainly giving these guys a little bit more confidence on the outside. So this setup, not too bad this side of the ruck. Body language at times, maybe not quite great. We're late in the games, a little bit of fatigue creeping in. So as you play it in slow-mo, puts Cameron in a terrible position to come off the line really crooked. If we watch Callum and we watch Liam Sutcliffe and Tommy Briscoe when he comes into shot, they've defended this perfectly up to this point. London have got a man on us, but Callum is on Abdull. Liam is on this guy. Tommy is on this guy. So to force Abdull into the pass, he's got to do one of two things. He's got to bullet that pass across Tommy, where Tommy will get a good look at it and have the opportunity to pick it off and intercept, or at very least knock it down. Or Abdull can go over the top with a long looping Harbour Bridge style pass, which will give Tommy time again to look, check, you know, scramble around and try and tackle his winger over the corner flag. Okay, so you know, given the situation, we would have wanted a bit more spread on our defensive line. These guys' job is to get as far away from our line, up to the 10-metre line if possible, if they can, and address the immediate. So the immediate here is 1, 2, 3, lead the winger over. We've done it really, really well. But just at this time, Callum takes a show and go from Abdull. And even at this point, you know, the importance of that metre, it leaves Cameron Smith stretching. His tackle selection is over the top, arms first. Even this far away from our line, Cameron's probably got an opportunity to get in there low and stop Abdull short. You know, he's maybe not that aware that he's probably, 4 or 5 meters off our try line. Okay, he probably thinks it's got to be a ball and all last ditch to stop him promoting the ball and getting the ball over. So his tackle selection is not great. He probably had a little bit more space than he thought. Abdull ducks under and scores a try. Disappointing try to concede. But we look at the fact that, these guys had defended in a way on an edge for a long time. That had a change from Dave Ferner and then a change from myself. So we've probably given them a couple of different principles on how to defend an edge. Late in a game, under pressure, a team that is probably riddled with anxiety and a little bit of a lack of confidence because of the sort of poor stretch of form that we've been in and a couple of disappointing results we'd had earlier, and a game that we're very much heating up and getting into battle, and we come up with a wrong decision and a try that, on most days we look like we were more than capable of stopping it. But I'll get back to edge defence a little bit there. Edge defence can be one of the most difficult aspects of the game, not to coach but to get right. The attack, constantly asking you questions, the quality of attack, so the quality of fullbacks in the competition. You look at St Helens and Lachlan Coote and his ability to find cut-out passes under pressure. You look at Sam Tompkins that can appear late, so quick, so strong. The way he fades in and out of holes, the way he can find find any pass really. Now, fullbacks can be really hard to defend, and we would look at our edge defence at the moment, for instance. Rob Louis' edge will defend very differently to Luke Gale and Conrad Earl's edge. Rob Louis can replay. I think every week you will look, Rob's probably got 6 or 7 misses to his name, but actually when you go back and watch the tape, a lot of that is Rob closing plays down and getting bumped off tackles. The 6 or 7 misses very rarely lead to line breaks or tries conceded for us. Even though he gets his misses again his name, he can be a very effective edge defender in the way that he defends. And we sort of build that into the way we defend and sort of knit it into our principles, allowing for the fact that, Robbie is a defender in his own style. So, yeah, looking at that game, we had some real early success defending the shapes that we wanted to defend, to the point where really after the first sort of 3 or 4 times that they used it on us, London went away from it a little bit and again probably adopted a little bit of a different style of attack during the game. So what we prepped for there, we got some joy out of, but the long side triangles were a little bit of an indicator of where things were going to head for London. Throwing the longer side shifts on then, as we're going to watch on some clips now, became somewhat more effective play for him in the build-up to our next game. So we're going to have a look at how, again, we made some slight alterations to our defence and what we challenged Jack Walker going into that game away at London and some of the improvements that we wanted to make. Okay. So lead-up play again, and what we talked about was they then became a team that were going to have more of a crack on the big side. Okay, so first thing we'll draw attention to is the fullback Walker. So we talked about him hiding behind the ruck, having the ability to swing both sides. He's most definitely planted on the big side, the open side here. Abdull's in that position where he can swing both ways at this point to give them a four-side attack. But just the mere fact of his starting position here, because he's not starting flat and over the ad line, the fact that if he does want to swing that short side, it will give our marker time to recover and get there. Okay, so we could actually end up with, if we have 4 defenders set and that marker does his job and can get there, we can get 5 defenders there very, very quickly, just given his starting point. If he was starting flat and over the ad line, it makes things a little bit different for us. But in this instance, the fact that he's got to travel that amount of distance to get there gives us that little bit more time. But what we're seeing here is we're seeing a deep and laid or deep and level play Fullback's definitely picked his side, so all the pivots are stacked on this side. So what they're going to throw is some shapes with 8 attackers against 6 defenders. So we'll let these roll. Try not to stop these too much. You know, it pulls the line apart, genuine leads into the holes. I say pull Saints apart, and then quick enough next play to cause enough chaos and enough disruption. Same again, a bigger side. And even though Saints round it up, you can start to see it's pulling them about and creating some chaos within their D-line. Okay, we're going to stick this one on close-up shot. And we're back to these middles that have that ability to bump you off. So we'll play this in slow-mo. So it hits the lead at this point. And as we're saying, if you want to put your fullback in the line, there's a couple of things. One, it's definitely going to open you up to any early kick play. So if a team wants to, you know, go for the high risk, high reward play, you know, expect them to kick the ball on you. When they're playing these type of plays where the pivots are playing out the back, you know, their ability to kick and chase is diminished a little bit, because generally, you know, the pivot will kick a little bit flatter with, you know, another pivot chasing a little bit flatter. But in this instance, what it also opens you up for is you have to defend your fullback in the line. So when you get a middle, you know, it might be a 6'3", 110 kilo middle, or in this instance, we got a guy who's, you know, got great leg speed, very powerful in his bump, good footwork. You know, his ability to bump, in this case, 9 levels there, and carry him over the line, again, that's a threat. And that's a threat that we know if we're going to defend our fullback in the line, then he's going to have to make some tackles in this situation. Okay, so we felt that if we organise our middles better, okay, we were going to have a look at being a little bit passive at marker, not jumping in, but getting Jack Walker on the bigger side. So he makes a 7-side defence. And, you know, one of the, I guess, sayings that we use a lot is your middle will really dictate how your edge defends. So if we could get our middle not getting shortened up, not getting turned in or out, we felt that would enable our edge to defend a lot more effectively in this game. So what I'm going to do now is throw some training clips on from that week. So we talked about our markers, and I'll bring us attention a little bit here to Mikolaj Aletsky. What we wanted our markers to be is passive. Okay, that way, if the hooker brings the ball into the line, we wanted him just to keep him at arm's length. So 2 things this will do. It'll help bring our line up, bring our middle line up. As you can see, Jack Walker's planted himself in at A, this side. So if the ball goes around to the back to the pivot, we know we get our first defender off the ruck. Even though Jack Walker's there, you know, he would genuinely be your A, but because we've got Jack in, he becomes your B defender. We would get him onto the pivot. All this time that this middle is doing this, it's bringing the edges up too. So if they get in a position where we get to a 5-on-4 situation, we know it's really easy then for the edge to collapse it from the outside and come and close the play down. Okay. The other thing about Mikolaj in A being passive is if they do decide to hit the middle runner, then Mikolaj can get in this tackle really quick and easy. So we tried to prep and prime the marker this week and the defender outside Jack Walker that they were going to be his bodyguards. We set the challenge down to Jack that, Jack, this week, you know, you're going to make some tackles. We want you to get your shoulder pads on, get ready to bend your back. You know, your average tackles per game is probably going to double in this game to what it normally does. But you're going to be in a position where you might have to make some try-saving tackles on the line, soak the ball up a little bit further away from our line, bend your back and stop these guys. But we put a real emphasis on our marker work and this defender here that they needed to protect Jack and get in on these tackles as quick as they can. Okay. The last point, if you see in the top corner here, that's the edges, and they're practicing at the 4-on-4 situations that we talked about if Abdull swings late. All right. So it's a little bit of practice for the middles, a little bit of practice for the edges, breaking it down, trying to get as many reps in as they can. You see next clip, passive at marker, and boom, Mikolaj getting in the tackle with Jack Walker. Okay, a little bit to pre-season, and because there's always a chance that you get some middle guys having to defend that edge. So where we saw the practice broken down there, middles and edges, just want to highlight the fact that we will stick the middles in on these defensive drills and try and defend people out of the zones. In this instance, the drill is we get the defenders to turn the backs so they can't see the setup of the attack. The attack is allowed 5 attackers or it's allowed 4 attackers. So we'll get the attack to mix it up. We'll also ask the attack to just throw different plays on. Okay, so as we call play, the guys turn around and it just gets these guys talking, communicating, recognizing shape and setups and understanding the roles. Okay, if these are 5-on-4 or these are 4-on-4, we get the guys reading and reacting accordingly. But importantly also, we get them defending out of the zones. All right, so middle guys will get little bits of practice in case they get caught on an edge. Let these roll through. See, turn the backs. It's a 5-on-4, and that dictates the way that they defend that play. These at the other end this time. Stevie Ward's defending at centre. Just giving him, again, practice in case he gets caught out of his zone. Thread it through a little bit more where you do it left and right. So you put the middles with the edges this time. Your left side again, your right side. Defending a shot. And just as we talked about earlier, when the ball player gets to the line, is that a big space for Liam to come and shut this down? We've got Ash Hanley playing fullback. We've got Richie Myler playing fullback. Just getting a few guys to play out of position. So we got Liam Sutcliffe with what looks on film a long way to go to come and close Ash Hanley down here. But again, just to highlight that these guys get pretty adept at reading and reacting, he come and closes the play down. It's fastest forward to the next play. Okay, so we got Callum McLennan, who's acutely aware that Liam Sutcliffe has just come out of the line to shut the fullback down. So Callum, being the smart footballer he is, tries to thread the ball through the back rower and the fullback to hit Connie. If Liam's got eyes for the fullback, that's where they'll create a disconnect here. But Liam, even though he's at the line, gets a good enough look at the pass to map off and go and tackle Conrad. Last bit of training film that we've got to show you, and this is back to the London week. But this is just highlighting again that, Rob Louis shuts it down from the outside. So next play. This is Jack coming in to make that 7. The ruck goes pretty quick on this play, so these guys don't really get organised quick enough to get a structured play on. But what we've got Ava going around the corner. Okay, so Brad knows his job is to come and help. Ava, as we saw in that earlier practice when we go 4v4, 5v4, we want to get our middles understanding and feeling comfortable about defending out of the zone. Okay, so it's an often used phrase. We want them feeling comfortable about being uncomfortable. So Ava's out defending an edge at this point. Hopefully we've done enough prep that he knows his role in that situation. Jack's in at A defender on the big side, but this is where it leaves us vulnerable. And it's great in this point that Brad's done his job, the edge has done its job. Pay attention to Jack. Probably not falling out of the line quite with enough urgency at this point. And we pick Luke Briscoe up right on the end of the line. Luke can probably be a step off that. And if we look just in slow-mo at Luke's body position, leaning forward, his turn's just not effective enough on this. He's just not got an efficient turn. They see there's a space behind, kick the ball, score a try. And that's a great warning shot for us, understanding where we're vulnerable and understanding that there's a couple of little areas where we've got to be really good. And that's Jack on his urgency in getting out of the line to watch the kick. And that is also Luke Briscoe, not quite being on the end of the line, but again, he's got to have a massive awareness that and big alarm bells that those kicks can come, and making sure his turns are really efficient. So we got that set up. The pivots are stacked. Abdull's behind the ruck. We've got all the pivots working together. we look at our markers. And say we'd ask them to be a little bit passive, give themselves probably a bigger step than they normally would in this particular game. Robbie, really casual, but he's got him covered, but nice and passive here. And what happens is Cunningham goes really early on the pass. The fact he goes early means, these guys are off straight away. That enables Jack to fall out of the line. Our line is up and straight and fluid. Okay, so at this point, the pass is clunky and it's low, and that sort of messes the play up for London a bit. But it puts us in a position that if Brock Lamb gets to Brett Ferris and we get the back row on Myler, you can see Conrad here ready to close this play down from the inside and stop us getting stripped for the numbers on the outside. Okay, next clip. And we talked about when we looked at the Wakefield clip from 5 meters out with 2 markers. Okay, so what we do in this instance, this has come from a play that's been held up. So it's reset at the 10. But any play inside the 10 will try and get to a position where we've got 1 marker. Okay, so there's a trade-off here. Generally, your markers, as we've seen, can go really hard and help and exert pressure on ball players. But when we get down to 1 marker, the trade-off is that you've basically got to secure this area and keep your eyes on the 9. So you naturally become really passive and just plug this hole. So you lose your ability to get too much pressure on from marker. However, the trade-off is this. The coverage on our line, we get an extra man back in the line, and because we're right on our try line too, Jack becomes a defender. So that 6-4 split effectively becomes a 7-5 split, which obviously is harder to get around or through. Okay, it leaves us definitely more passive at marker, but as you can see, it gives us more coverage and gets everybody off a lot easier. Same again, Conrad's ready in case this back row comes in here to come and close the fullback down, to get back a couple of fractions. Even if Brock Lamb throws, threads that pass through, what we saw Callum McLennan do, if he threads that pass through to try and hit the centre, that's enough time for Conrad to read that and get off that to become a 2-on-2 situation. But they read it well. Richie Myler really strong in the tackle. Brett Ferris really strong in the tackle. Okay, we'll look at Jack Walker at this point. He knows he's got to get this side organised. They got 3 attackers. We need an extra 1. If you go man-on-man in these situations, it's very easy for London to carry a defender over the line with him and play a little bit wider of the ruck and get you coming off your try line at a really poor angle. So Jack organises his line. He gets Brad Dwyer there. That gives us 3. Waits there himself. Puts Richie Myler there to give us 4. That releases these guys to get up really hard on line speed. And now Jack's role. We talk about the importance of the fullback, apart from his organisational abilities. Richie Myler and Jack, their first protocol is to make sure this dummy half doesn't try and barge over. Jack's watching, releases the ball. Now, bang, Jack's out of the line, covering the kick. And just as we talked about and seen on that training film, we understood that once Jack were in the line, London would see Jack defending there, so they would do 1 or 2 things. They would send some runners over him, or if the shifts were being ineffective, they've got smart coaches and smart players, they would try and keep the ball. They'd try and tie Jack up in the line, wait for him around marker, and try and put the ball, especially coming off alongside. This is always generally a really vulnerable area for you. Rob Louis, he's probably got eyes for Abdull, seen him flattened up here, so he's acutely aware that a kick might be coming. We prepped Jack for this. You'd seen in training that we'd got one wrong and conceded a try. So Jack's come into this game with a real awareness that, once they find him in the line, they might kick the ball. So again, great work from Jack and, what we class as a try saver in that situation. Okay, just at this one, Mikolaj Aletsky just draws a line in the sand a little bit here. Mick could come forward on this, but because he doesn't, because he's got eyes for the ball player and he just plants himself down, straight runner here again has an effect on Trent Merrin. Trent can't leave Mikolaj here. If he gets in front of Mikolaj, that creates a running lane for Abdull. So Trent can't get forward because Mick doesn't get forward on this one. And that locks them 2 in. Brett Ferris, again, very experienced player and good defender, Brett. Brett has a read of this pass. There's a lot of time, depth, and distance, and he makes the read that I'm going to shut this down. Richie Myler shuts the next lane down. Conrad's on his way to shut this lane down and take the time away and make it really difficult for London to get the ball away from around us. Again, strong in the tackle. Okay, so we've seen our edge defence operating, okay there. So we're going to bring it back to Jack Walker a little bit. The amount of running he has to do at the back of the line, the amount of times that he's had to put himself in the line of being available to make tackles, and the challenge that we set to him earlier in the week that, at the time he'd got a bung shoulder that, you might be able to catch from the film. He's padded up, he had an injection in there to sort of take away the pain towards the back end of the season. So we're just going to have a look at how he sort of rose to the challenge and, come up with some really, really big plays in this game for us. So as we saw in the Salford game, we got this wrong a little bit here. We got the ruck speed has been a bit quick for us. We've ended up with a lot of players defending around a short area, which leaves a big space under our posts. Brett Ferris's mark, if you like, is to defend on the outside post. So we need these guys to fill these spaces between the ruck and Brett. We've got really tight. We've not quite got his marker play right. So we're looking in. Fortunately for us, it doesn't make it to this space here. But the play doesn't quite get over Jack. But in this tackle, Jack gets involved to lock the ball up. Don't want to make this a strength contest. If Mikolaj just wants to try and get a shot on here, that can sometimes, if we've got a guy that wants to hit and spin or bump, create space, and space that close enough to the line can enable him to wriggle out and get the ball down. So this is more of a soaking up tackle. Mikolaj will underhook him. Jack, Trent Merrin, make a big play on the ball to secure that ball and make sure he can't get it over on his front. Okay, the next one. Again, Jack's in the line. Great effort from Adam Cuthbertson to get out at marker. They can recognise that this runner's on his own. Trent Merrin gets in the tackle, but Jack ends up in the tackle. Now, at this point, we get some outside assist from Brad Dwyer. Allied to that, Cuthball gets a bit of a head knock, so he's on the floor. So the fact we get some outside assist from Brad, what that does is it shortens our lineup. So Brett Ferris immediately knows we're under pressure, and he calls Ava over. You can see Ava. He's aware we're under pressure too. And if we put it on the big shot, London is stacking all their numbers to this side. Okay, so Robert's really comfortable with 4 defenders on 3. Okay, Cuthball, we've got to disregard him at this point because he's not getting back into the line. But really smart play from Jack again. Recognition that we're a man down. We can't afford a fullback. They've got all their numbers coming this side. So he comes up and becomes a genuine A defender. Okay, which helps our edge. As soon as the pass goes, he's back into cover. Richie's strong in the tackle again, and we mop that up. A little bit of a quicker ruck. Really unscripted. Bit of second phase on it. And we just watch Jack here, talking, pointing out, the energy that's coming from him. This is not really stuff that you plan for, but Ash comes to close the play down because we're in a little bit of trouble numbers-wise. Makes him make the hard pass, buys us enough time, and here's Jack scrambling really hard to make another try-saving tackle for us. And forces an error. And you can see Ash's delight, understanding what his teammates done for him in that situation. Okay, close to our line again. We get a man on the deck. We lose our right to chase from marker. All happening a little bit quick. But again, this is Jack just rising to that challenge. Making a tackle on the big guy. Making him spill the ball. Showing the tenacity to go and try and dive, on the scraps on the floor and coming up with an error for his team. Great work from Jack on that point. Just to sort of cap that off, sometimes it doesn't always look as you've planned. We've only given you a really short little excerpt of, how they're set up for their go-to plays, if you like. But there's plenty of other tackles in the set and other situations and scenarios that, that your defence has got to deal with. It shows you a little bit on the subtleties on how your edge defence can address different situations. But more importantly, I would say, you know, the fullback role now. Traditionally, your fullback used to stand behind the line. Years gone by, fullbacks are always renowned for the last-ditch try-saving tackles. You know, also their ability to defuse bombs. But I think you can see in the modern game now, such the way that attacks can manipulate you around the field, the ability to put himself in the line when he's needed, but also fall out of the line, the amount of running that he does, the last-ditch tackles, the smaller guys tackling the bigger guys, the work of the fullback in this day and age, you know, it's a very, very demanding position. You've got to be aerobically fit, and you've got to be very, very good both sides of the ball. And if we can have a look at some of Jack's stats, is, you know, probably pay attention to his attacking game. He's come up with 26 carries for 233 metres and 2 tries, 15 supports. That's an enormous amount of work in attack. Okay, so I'll add that to the amount of running he's done in defence. He's come up with 7 tackles, which is slightly above average. Not too much more, but slightly above average for him this game. Come up with 2 forced errors and 3 try savers. And he's covered over 8,000 metres, which is, again, is slightly above average. But when we're talking about fullback being one of the most demanding positions, what it probably don't have as much is obviously the low tackling. But 26 carries is a lot of carries too. But as an aerobically, you know, fullbacks have got to be very, very fit. And as you can see now, the importance of the role, what they've got to play on both attack and defence, has very much changed and evolved from, you know, what you would consider the traditional role of the fullback. I hope that's given a little bit of insight just into a couple of small snippets, really, on how we might defend a shorter side, and how we might defend the longer side. But in particular, you know, the role of the fullback in the modern game. You know, is so vital to what you do on attack, but importantly now defensively, you know, he has a lot of work to do. You know, putting himself in the line, reading plays, making tackles, and also, you know, how it can go wrong a little bit. You know, sometimes in a play, it's not just one tackle, and it's not just one mistake that can cost you a try. Quite often, it can be a combination of 2 and sometimes even 3 things. It might just not be that tackle that they got you on. It might be the play before that's really got you in the build-up and left your defensive line in a little bit of chaos. Okay, so I hope that's been helpful and you've enjoyed watching. And I look forward to watching the next coach that comes up, see if we can pick anything up. Thank you.